so we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order, and we're going to start with introductions. So let's go around the table, and then we'll do the back of the room, and then we'll do online.
Eric Osnes, Chief Safety and Security Officer.
Gary Lee, General Manager of Operations, acting for Miss Victoria Jones.
Brad Thomas, CATS General Counsel.
Rick Cagle, interim CEO.
Adam Dory, MPTA Council.
Julie Isel, Committee Chair.
David Longo, trustee.
Brad Simmons, trustee.
Ken Shore, trustee.
Deborah Campbell, transition plan director. Carolyn Flowers, transition plan director.
Elizabeth from City Cat staff. Leah Forth, Cat's Chief Development Officer.
Bruce.
Bruce Jones, Service Planning Manager, CATS.
Rachel Stark.
Jake Brown, President, CATS.
Rachel Bragg, Technology.
Nigeria Johnson.
Chestnut staff. Cat staff. Brittany Paul, Cats.
Earl Perkins Jones, transition team.
Thank you. And let's go online. Online. Mike, do you want to start?
Mike Bryant, trustee.
Good morning, Christy Long, Board Secretary.
Morning, this is Robert Beal with EY.
Okay, I think that's it. I know we have Trustee Cameron Pruitt is going to join us shortly. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. I do not have a report from the chair. So let's go right to the staff.
Staff report, we don't have a staff report today. We normally give the safety stats, but this is the second meeting in this month. So no new stats until next month.
Okay, then we'll move on to the business items. The first item is Operations and Safety Committee meeting calendar. Elizabeth, do you have any comments about that?
No, it's maintaining the same cadence that you've had for the last couple of months, being the fourth Wednesday of the month. I did just for November and December due to the holidays.
Okay, and so we need to approve that, is that right? So we make a motion to approve the calendar as presented through December of 2026.
So moved.
Second.
Any, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay. And there's Cameron. Morning, Cameron.
Morning.
Okay.
And we did include in the agenda packet upcoming agenda items based on the work plan, so that will be fluid, the page after the agenda. So as we update things and add things to the calendar, that will be a standing item in the packet.
Okay. And so this evening we will have this presented to the full board along with the other two committees' work plans, so we can kind of compare them.
Yeah.
Side by side. All right. Thank you. Moving along we have a presentation or a discussion on the advisory committee development.
I'd like to introduce Rachel Stark, who's been helping to work through kind of what the PTAC looks like, second generation. So today we'd like to really work and get direction from the committee on what the advisory group's focus should be, who should be represented on the advisory committee, and what the relationship should be to the MPTA board. And so she will walk through some kind of what PTAC has been doing to date, and then what other transit systems do from an advisory board standpoint, and then lead in some discussion on some of the various those various questions. So with that, I'll turn over to Rachel.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
You want me to sit over here? Then I can actually see the
If you want to
screen.
roam in the empty youth space.
I appreciate it. I stand right there. If we could go to the next slide. This covers basically, with today, I would really like everyone to be focusing on what should the advisory group's focus be. And obviously share what PTAC has been doing, and be thinking about who should be represented. I know I've heard a few ideas of what that should look like, and what the relationship to the MPTA board should be. We have done some peer analysis, and I'll bring that up as well in this presentation. With that, the idea is next month we'll bring to you a draft, so that you can pick what you would like to move forward. Next slide. So it's an industry standard to have an advisory board. Not everybody does, but most advisory boards are there with transit agencies for a couple of different reasons. In NEPA and Title VI requires really in-depth public engagement, and having that set up with an advisory board really helps. It can often be like a first test for some ideas that you want out there. Right now, there are a lot of different ways you could go with that. You can have a transit, you can have transit riders, current customers. You can also think about communities that need transit and how we can help serve them better. Also thinking about where communities, where transit investments are planned. So thinking about some of the big investments of realistic, having engagement early on those is really helpful. And oftentimes there's some special interest groups, whether it's people who are young, people who are over the age of 65. Geographic representation, there's a lot of different ways people look at having a segment of the population that they might not usually hear from these places. Next slide. So with CATS, we've had before PTAC, which is only a little over a year old, we had a couple of different committees within serving MTC. One was TSAC, and that was really focusing on the transit riders. And then CTAG, which had a financial focus, and that was set up through an interlocal agreement. With the help of PTAC, who also really supported merging into one because they were seeing a lot of the same information and felt like they could collaborate together better. It was merged into one in 2024 and actually kicked off in April of last year. The topics that were covered are things like the 2055 transit system plan and better bus, red line, silver line, the CATS budget, marketing communication policy, and a lot of things related to operations, including fare modernization, which I know you guys also saw quite a bit of, and then thinking about even some of the service changes coming as well. And June of this month just passed, the advisory board would continue as is through December of this year. Next slide. So we looked at several different peer cities, and those are based off of a few different things. Some we didn't want to stick with just people who were just agencies that covered similar ridership, though there are a couple of those. We are also looking at knowing that you guys want to be aspirational and how we treat advisory boards. We pulled in a few other examples. So in there we have Sound Transit, the SANS Trans, which serves San Mateo County over in California, Denver, RTD, Cap Metro in Austin, DART, Dallas, MARTA, of course, WMATA, which is Washington, D.C. area, and then Hampton Roads Transit, which serves Norfolk in that area. And so what you see here are a spectrum of where we fall currently with PTAC in red compared to the other black triangles show where some of the other agencies fall. So reporting relationship, scope of review, purpose of the advisory body, length of terms, meeting frequency, appointing authority, and number of members. And so overall, in looking at these different agencies and their advisory bodies, PTAC is a little bit less formal than some of these other bodies. They don't have necessarily as strong of a relationship as could be with an advisory board. Having them structure the reports in a different way can help build some of their authority and relationship with the board. They're also broader in scope than some. They don't just focus, for example, on air transit. They focused they've reviewed a lot of different topics, and so we're more on the far end of that scope of review. In the past, of course, there was a little bit more focus thinking about the budgeting. That there was some specificity in the past, and now but we are pretty average with everybody else when it comes to our representation, the membership size, meeting frequency, and next slide.
Can you go back one second, Rachel? Sorry. What is appointing authority? What does that mean?
So that was looking mostly at who's selecting them. So for instance, PTAC, right now you've appointed them, but they were obviously previously appointed by the jurisdictions and selected to be serving in this capacity.
Versus everybody else who appoints them.
Correct. So some of them, for example, Samtrans and MARTA, they have some seats where they are appointed by, they might have certain seats that are jurisdictions could say we have like 1 or 2 members that are jurisdiction appointed versus like everything else or selected versus everything else being selected by the transit board.
So some of the, so understanding sort of all of this goes back to understanding why there were 2 and how this all occurred. So before the MPC existed, there was an advisory committee to Charlotte City Council. And that was really about types of riders, right? And they were thinking about service. And then way back when the MTC was created, there was another advisory committee created. And that really, it had riders on it, but it was really focused on a regional representation. Each town had an appointee. And they both existed, but they didn't coexist great because they sort of did the same thing. And so when the interlocal was updated in 2024, they were merged. And so now our membership is really about ridership, types of riders, as well as regional representation. It's both in the PTAC. And then there were 2 additional members added that were just specifically riders, and they were appointed by the MTC itself. And so that's sort of how you get to 15. It was a blending of the 2 and taking the 2 concepts from membership and putting it into one and continuing it on.
Okay, I just wonder about the efficacy of that method, given that we're such an outlier from our peers. Is that
Certainly
good or
could be
bad?
something to be reviewed.
Next slide. So we really just went over this. And so I think we can move forward to the next piece as well. So one of the other things that we've done is really go through and we asked the current 13 members serving on PTAC to share some of their thoughts on like how the last year's gone. Do they feel like that their expectations for serving on PTAC was being met? Generally speaking, everyone who responded, and it was only about half of the members responded, they felt like they were serving the purpose that they were brought in for, and their favorite topics were TSP, modernization, CAS facilities, CAS budgets, transit safety and security, which really like resonates with some of the things that you guys are also really care about. Some of the PTAC member insights that they would like to leverage their service and for having an advisory board to really make sure that they're bringing a impactful feedback to support your decisions and complement the work that you will do as a governing body. And they said that too, it would be helpful to have more representation of daily transit providers in their opinion as well, because there are people who ride transit but not necessarily dependent on transit who are participating in this. And there's a couple different ways that gets done in different agencies. Sometimes they choose riders, but sometimes riders are busy, especially daily riders. I was actually thinking about taking transit today and looking at, for me to go from where I live on the west side of Charlotte to drop off kids at Harris YMCA for camp and then get over here. And I'm like, nope, there's no way I'm going to be able to make it in time in the narrow window I have to drop off the children. So trying to get representation can also be done through working with agencies that serve heavy transit riders. You can also add representation. They also were saying that they'd like to see representation from more seniors and youth. And again, that can be not just the youth or seniors themselves, but members who support agencies that support these particular individuals. For example, right now, one of the things that is different from what you all do is we have a CMS representative in Kentucky. Next slide. So today I would really like to facilitate a conversation with you all and get an idea of what perspectives are needed to help advise MPTA based on what you know you all bring to the table, who you represent, the geography you represent, where you feel like we need a little bit additional voice in the room. And there's some different topics obviously under there. Also thinking about what topics should the group advisory focus on, and who should the group report to directly to the board or potentially to committees such as operations safety or the others that are there. And then what structure should the advisory body have set up? Should it be a single advisory committee? That's a good thing. So with that, I would like to kick off the conversation and hear some of your questions or thoughts. Obviously, I'm happy. I've done way more depth of research, so if you want to hear about some of the other cities, I'm happy.
Couple observations as you all are having a conversation. And I've staffed other citizen advisory committees as well as these two over the last 4 years. I think that for these two, initially when I started with CATS, it was more common for them, for the members to bring in specific issues each week or month. You know, we saw this happen and we'd like to, and then it was also common for us to really be presenting things to them. The budget, those kinds of things. What we have tried to do more recently is get them engaged on projects, right? So instead of talking at them, really having a conversation and getting their feedback. A good example is right now the PTAC is working on, there are several members with disabilities that are visually impaired. And so we are working with them on a project for wayfinding for the visually impaired that could lead us to then making recommendations for technology to the full board. And so I do think that these kinds of groups are really important, but it is very important to give them something to do, not just talk at them every month. And so that's what we have been trying to do to get their feedback, because it is very meaningful, because many of them, they understand the system from their perspective and they can provide great feedback.
Thank you. Do you have anything you want to ask about?
Commissioner. Yeah, I was like, Brad, you attacked a little bit. Brad as well. I was going to flip from the bottom. I think it's worked out better as a single advisory committee than we had to do. I think some of that got lost in the translation as we received reports back to when I was on MTC. So I do believe that it needs to be a single advisory committee. I also believe that we need to get more daily writers involved. You mentioned that earlier. I think a lot of times they're reporting back to a group, whatever that group may be, that doesn't write as often as they do. So we need that input. And that can be an assignment. Bring us back the stuff that you say all the time. I think that's quite important. And then only to have a couple with disabilities, I think that number can be increased. I think we need to kind of go out there. At one point in time, and I can tell you, sitting in a seat as a mayor that had to appoint somebody, we were just kind of out there grasping for somebody to sit on that committee. And then as I moved on to the MPC and saw how important what it was, I thought, well, we should have spent a lot more time on that. So I'd like to spend more time on the selection process and get those people involved that will bring feedback. Only other thing is their reports many times to us were verbal, and we gave them a short window during a meeting to bring that back. And I'd like to see that come back to us in some written form so that we don't miss anything in what they're trying to bring to us. And I don't think it needs to be reported to the whole board personally. I think it can be brought back to committee. The committee can take from the full board any concerns that we might have. That's my input.
Christy, I see that you have a hand up. I'm going to go to Cameron and then the committee that's here, and then I'll go to you.
Yeah, I agree that it should be a single committee as well. I think, again, we're going to start making a number of advisory committees. There are lots of other things that I could think that we may need that may fit better in like a planning stage 2. I agree that we need more disability representation. I agree we need more daily transit writer representation. I do want to, look at ways where we can structure some formal recommendations that we request on a regular basis, whether that is, of course, when we do operational changes to bus routes, but maybe more frequent quarterly check-ins as well about specific feedback on, we talked about in the app moving the see something, say something, making that a red button. Did you notice this? Has anyone that you talked to in the bus noticed this option?
That was a suggestion from one of your PTAC.
Right, exactly, right. So like when we do things like that, or that as we do the disability pilot, right, for the visually impaired. And so I think even getting feedback of, we started charging for the gold line, right? In 6 months. Have you noticed anything with that? Just having specific things where we solicit feedback in our meetings, we like on our agenda as well regularly of what are things we want specific feedback on from PTAC. I do like, and again, this may end up being a planning thing. I do like the partnership with our education institutions. I do like that CMS has someone there. I do think we're talking about partnerships as well with our universities, with microtransit and with other things. So I'd like to see, at least a CMS appointee or someone from education there. And then finally, too, I think one of our biggest nonprofit wraparound challenges too is around our unhoused population, right? And that's where a lot, especially when I talk to our bus drivers, is where a lot of their concerns come from or recurring instances. And so having a way to find a partner that works with that population specifically to be on there, I think would be helpful as well. When we talk about, as we do our fare modernization, are there issues with that or how to distribute passes to folks? And so I'd like to see maybe find a partner to work specifically with that population.
You had mentioned kind of the daily riders, and then you also said specific to some of our services. When you think about the daily riders, do you also think about maybe having mode specific, so making sure there's a blue line, somebody who represents blue line, maybe the gold line and other, just more generally.
Yeah, absolutely right. Too, microtransit, right? I don't even know. I'm not sure if anyone currently on PTAC is a regular microtransit user. Air transit, STS. I think that's important. I almost like, because I get why it's so big and why it's so hard to fill these positions. I almost would prefer to prioritize making sure that we have that ridership lens than necessarily having the perfect geographic lens. Because the MPTA, it has a guaranteed geographic lens. I agree. I know we want to do both, but if we have to pick one, I want to pick prioritizing those ridership population specificities over a geographic.
David, do you have anything?
When I think about this, I'll start with an organizational perspective of our role as a governing oversight body, and then what the role of this entity is. Is it more aligned with reporting and providing information to the oversight body, or is it more impactful working with staff in management? Because when I think about all the tactical issues, I think one of the things that we have to be cognizant of is our job as a board is not to be in the weeds doing tactics. And I think what we're looking for a lot of these people, which I think is extremely important, is to be able to provide that information to management so that management's acting on things and then working with them to bring stuff to us. So just for me, it's like we're alignment, and maybe it's the having both, but my expectation is I, as a trustee, is not sitting here spending time on, let's call it the ergonomics or design of the bus stop and how that operates. But I would very much value people who are using the bus stops to provide that information, working with the expertise of our CATS team to then bring those recommendations to us way, knowing that that was not just staff doing it on their own and they were being informed by the riders. So I just think of the relationship first. As far as the other comments, I agree 100% with you. Well, single committee makes more sense to me. The geographic diversity, I think, could be important, but I agree with you that you got to have the right people. The challenge is it's different for people coming from Mooresville versus Waxhaw versus West Charlotte, and so they do probably bring a different experience to the table. So if we can achieve that, social, economic type different backgrounds, I think is an important life stage, because if it's different when you have 3 little kids versus when you're 55 and your kids are out of the house, right? And you have more leisure time. So I think that diversity and the diversity of types of riders, I think I lean to, we need people system day to day who can say, this is what it's like when you're standing at a bus stop on Park Road, kind of thing. So that
Yeah, no, those are good points. I feel like, and I'm just sort of spitballing this here, but
I think you forgot Chris.
oh, okay.
Okay.
I was just gonna go around. Sorry, Ken, I didn't, I'm gonna back up to you. Christy, I'm gonna go with the committee members are here and then I'll go on.
I think that, including daily riders and particularly, representatives of the in-house and mentally, I think are important legends to include in this. I think it's not here, but there will be another place that will have community input on, displacement and, access to affordable housing and that's not including that here is because it belongs someplace else. But otherwise, I agree.
Yeah, I'm just gonna make my comment, then we'll go to folks online. I just wonder if there's an opportunity to use our folk, but well, first of all, let me back up. You said that it's hard to get people on PTAC. Is that right? Is there a way to sort of kind of anoint them as ambassadors and give them transit passes, but then ask them for feedback when they do ride? So our most frequent travelers, give them a transit pass, but they need to report things into us because I agree with your comments, David. I also want to make sure that we hear back from staff and how certain things are and addressed. So that it is flowing both ways for sure. It's not just that comments go one way and we say we hear you. We don't know what the results is. So I'd like to think a little bit out of the box on that, how we can be more active with our PTAC committee members in a way that also acknowledges that we know how valuable their input is.
Yeah, Julie, not to jump in if you don't mind, but I agree with that. Like, I would expect that we were hearing all the feedback. I just expect that it's staff that's acting on it and then bringing that to us, but it shouldn't be, oh, we should provide feedback to us. And I love your idea of we're asking people to volunteer their time, particularly when you think about a lot of these riders and the other holes on their life experience, providing them a soft benefit of a pass is a like lift for us.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that kind of at the end too. We talked about structure too, about the opportunity to offer them the pass.
Because they could even be on.
Because that, because it's a time benefit, especially if you're an hourly worker relying on that.
Yeah, sure. They could be giving talking to their fellow riders and giving them QR codes. Hey, give us some feedback on your rider experience, but really be more active with that.
We do provide that with it.
Okay.
Oh, good. Good. Okay. Christy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I echo a lot of what was said in the room. I agree that the advisory committee should report to a committee, not the full board. But a couple of things that, if it was said in the room, I might have missed it. How do we make sure we are addressing the needs of people with invisible disabilities? We can see someone in a wheelchair, and perhaps we know someone who is visually impaired or maybe even hearing impaired, but there are other invisible disabilities that we need to make sure we are sensitive to, as well as we transform and deliver services for our riders. So I don't know where we are on that. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, and there's a variety of things that we do with our operations staff and education, but we haven't tackled that specifically with PTAC, but that is definitely something that we can work to do. And then also as we look to select members for PTAC through an application process, we can also ask, some of those characteristics so that we make sure we have a broader spectrum of participants on PTAC as we work through that selection.
Okay. And so also on the advisory committee, I would, if you're not already addressing this, have representation with people who have English as a second language. I'll just go through my list that I was able to compile while Madam Chair was speaking. So English as a second language, I imagine our riders that represent some population of our riders. And then maybe this is something for us to consider is we want people who don't live in the city to experience our transit opportunities. And so would we ask for a representative? I don't know if that's CRVA, but somehow understand the experience of someone who doesn't live in this region but is visiting this region that wants to use transit. I'll just keep going with my list. I think we should have some representation from non-riders. Maybe a major employer might want to have representation there so that they could determine how they customize their benefits to encourage transit ridership. And then the other thing that I was thinking about is as we explore emerging technologies to around safety and other things to improve the rider experience. I don't know how we would do this, but is there a way to have kind of a user group that could participate in pilots for us? Would that be this advisory committee? Would it be the advisory committee identifying people to participate? But in that participation, we'd want, the full spectrum, novices in technology to people who are very experienced with technology, so that we get a feel for how our riders might experience these emerging technologies before a full deployment.
Yeah,
And
that's something we're doing currently with wayfinding for those that are visually impaired. So that is a great use case for the PTAC membership, and we have several members engaged and involved in that, and they're getting volunteers that are outside of PTAC to assist in the testing and stuff. So
Yeah, they're literally field testing three different tools. Yeah. And because they have community connections with others, they brought them in. So that is literally what the PTAC is doing right now. And I think it's a good thing, right? To be able to utilize it that way.
What kind of tools are they testing?
It's for visually impaired, and as I understand it, there's sort of two different versions. There's software systems out there that work with your phone that can assist you with wayfinding if you're visually impaired, to identify bus stops and to reach the bus stop and to get, all of those things. And they work there. There's two different predominant ways that the systems work. One is camera based and one is
Puck, like a
geolocated. So a geolocation puck. And there are several systems out there that use one or the other of those systems, and literally they've identified three different of those systems, and they are working with us to pilot and understand what they like best about each of those systems, so that hopefully they can make a recommendation to the MPTA, to CATS, and ultimately the MPTA as we think about implementing a system that would meet that need. So that is literally what they're doing, right now.
I have a couple of more things. It also would be interesting to have someone on the advisory committee that represents the occasional rider, the rider who uses transit maybe to get to the arena or to a Panthers game or to the entertainment that is offered in a particular part of town. So it'd be interesting to get that perspective of an occasional rider, and then maybe even perhaps a non-rider, to understand why they aren't riding, and perhaps from their feedback we could increase the opportunities for non-riders to become riders. And then the last thing that I'll mention is Madam Chair talked about the incentive of giving out some incentive around giving a pass for riders to use. I would ask that we think about an entire incentive package and really leverage our advisory committee as true ambassadors. Maybe their swag we give them, their shirts that we give them, jackets, but make it a big deal. And maybe there's even some kind of stipend that they get for the work that they'll do. If you want to ask them to, when they're writing, to, present QR codes to other writers. So have a whole package that of our expectations, but also the incentive that they get for participating.
I see Elizabeth nodding and smiling. So do you have any comments you wanted to offer?
No, those are things that we've thought about as we're thinking about kind of PTAC 2.0 that we've talked internally about. So yeah.
Okay.
One other thought, and I think all of this is great feedback, but I'm always sort of process oriented sometimes. I do think another decision for the MPTA, for this committee, is think about what is the flow of direction. Will the PTAC identify things that they want to work on with cats, and then that comes to committee for approval? Or will the committee identify things that the committee wants them to work on, or the MPTA, and it flowed down? Or maybe it's a combination, but I do think setting a work plan and how that work plan gets set would be something you would want to think about as part of the structure, so that the PTAC member to understand roles and responsibilities more clearly. If an annual work plan from the committee, how does that work? And then what do they do with that, right? Do they provide written reports or all those kinds of things? And that formalizes it a little bit more.
Yeah, I love the opportunity to actually hear directly from PTAC. I don't know if it means the chair comes, and I don't know if that's too onerous.
That's what's been done in the past.
The chair comes to the committee meetings?
Yes.
Okay.
And makes presentation.
Okay. I have to be honest that on city council, we didn't get a lot of direct feedback. They'd be in our packets, but they're big packets, and Cameron's laughing and smiling and probably going, yeah, I know. But I do think that there should be more direct interface with the committee and with PTAC members, so that we hear it firsthand and they also hear what our priorities are.
And I think it's important to bring forth that it flows both ways.
Absolutely.
I think they can even create things that we need to look at. I think it needs to be flow both ways, but I think we need to be less involved in you making presentations to that committee as far as budget and all that kind of thing. That was not the important input that I saw coming from that.
Right.
So some of those kind of things can go away. So it may have to start at this committee with us giving some direction, but it can flow both ways. From you, from us, from you.
David, you had a comment earlier.
My early comment was, I think people will find the greatest level of fulfillment when they do things such as you were talking about, where you're engaged in something versus, and maybe it's just me, I'm just not a report out guy. Like, I want to be a part of getting something done. I think they'll find great fulfillment by, here's issues that they surfaced and they kind of got to work shoulder to shoulder with your team to be able to bring forward solutions. I think that's a really great practice. I do agree that we should reserve the right to weigh in, but I would hope that the writers and staff would probably surface things before we would, but we might surface some things that we're saying, hey, we want you to go look at this. So I think I'm agreeing with everyone, but I would expect that the best ideas are going to come from the people who are using the system or who operate the system versus some of us.
It's that point, how do we recently, some of us received or copied on an email that a user provided to somebody they knew or a MPTA board member, and it went to Brent. In that example of that writer's experience, how do we direct that issue that that individual had in a way that we make sure that the user, the writer of the email knows that it's being addressed, and B, that we know it can filter back. So in other words, if somebody that sends you an email and says, hey, I had this experience on the bus or the light rail, instead of sending it right to Brent, is there a way to say, we're going to send it through our PTAC committee because they record these things, And it fits into these categories of things they look at, and they'll make sure that you get response.
So we do have a customer service manager who all the emails that go to Brent go to, and they
Okay.
personally reach out to him, and then it goes through a customer service process, and then follow up with staff and the departments, depending on the issue or what took place, and may require additional training by, depending on the issue. And so that does take place, and that is actually, we'll be presenting that later this summer or early fall, kind of how we work through customer service complaints and whatnot to the
But
committee.
I guess what I'm getting at is, how do we make sure that they're not siloed, right? So that if it's a specific complaint about a specific issue, and PTAC's also addressing it, but PTAC doesn't know that that got sent to customer service.
Yeah, and so one of the things we're spending a lot of time on is our reporting, and we have a new person in the customer service manager role, and they have done a great job of working through the data and systems to do more reporting. And so that is something that I could see as we formalize those reports, is that's a component of the PTAC agenda to kind of look and see where customer feedback's been, and then we can discuss also strategies on how.
I think it becomes a feedback loop. So for a direct customer complaint, large or small, we want those to come directly to us so that we can investigate and understand what happened and take action. But then as we report what we're seeing in trends based on those customer service complaints, right, that they sometimes start to trend together. One person reports something and it's a one-off. 20 people report something and you start to have a trend. And that's where I think that the customer service group can then do that data analysis, and that leads to PFAC and conversations, and in MPTA and conversations about how we resolve the trend. A good example of that is we have had feedback individually about STS, but that has been more than one individual, right? And so again, we're responding to each of those concerns, but we're also looking globally and working to address the global issue, not just with one customer's experience.
I know we have a full agenda, so we will plan to bring back a draft charter and application and process for moving this forward. But your feedback has been awesome, and we really appreciate the time and conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel, for the presentation.
Sorry, I did just want to add one thing. So one of the things I do really like about PSAC right now is the project feedback template, where they have here's when you made the feedback, here's where it is in progress, and here's our timeline to fix it. I like to see something like that considering you've been into, sorry.
Okay, no, that was a good conversation. It really gets to the heart of why we're here, is improving the customer experience too. So, operations technology modernization program.
You swapped one Rachel for another.
All the Rachel's.
Yeah. Great, thank you for that excellent lead-in, because I heard so much conversations about technology. So really, in your packet, there was a quick brief on how technology underpins everything that we do now as a transit agency and stuff. So earlier, you heard my analogy about, you can think of technology as a construction crew building your new house. So that's our infrastructure and typical business processes that we were talking about last time. So now we've built that house using that team, and instead we're bringing in our next team. And you can think of this technology team as your landscape designers and your interior designers. Now we're going to take your house, we're going to make it look like how you want it to live in. What color do you want it to be? Do you want flowers? Do you want trees outside? Outside is what we're going to be showing our customers. Inside is where we live as a transit agency. And our operational technology group takes care of both of those things. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the projects that we have in progress, why we're doing them, and really why during this really difficult and heavy time for us, why are we not slowing down these technology projects so that we can focus more on the build out for the authority. So since about 2020, we've been on a roadmap to modernize most of our transit operational technology. We have done numerous projects. after about 3 years of heavy learning and understanding of what CATS really needs from a technology perspective to modernize that business, I put in about 10 of these projects into a roadmap that needed more funding than that was typically necessary. And we're also going to be a much heavier lift for our operations, our safety and security groups, our CATS finance groups, all of them. So these are large, long-term projects that we are undertaking to better the business. We're focusing on specifically the areas you see in the bottom under the benefits heading. We're looking for improvements on how we measure performance, improve safety, manage the assets, control our service delivery, enhance that customer experience like we were just talking about, and do a better job of meeting the federal and state reporting requirements. Next slide, Logan. So in your packets or in the printout, here's a picture that you guys can go back to and reference whenever you want. But I tried to put together, if you can believe, this is a simplified high-level diagram of the major technology systems for operations, so that's bus and rail predominantly, as well as safety. These are the major systems that the operational technology group is working on right now, with the exception of continuous service operations on TDX at the end. That's the technology system that Gary's team uses to run and understand what's going on in our rail environment. You can see real quick, right here in the middle, the heart of our operations are these operations control centers. We have them for both bus and rail. If Gary needs to know what's going on in his rail environment, he calls his operational control center. If Shaky needs to know what's going on in his bus environment, he calls his bus operations control center. So it's a busy diagram. I'm not going to go through it, but it's just a little visual if you guys want to reference back to that later. Next slide, Logan. All right. So we talked about those large service areas. Within technology, our big areas are service operations. So that's how do we schedule our vehicles and how do we schedule our operators. So we use on-route tasks for those. From an asset management perspective, we are working on projects for to implement a new Trapeze Enterprise Asset Management System, a new risk safety management software. You're going to hear more about that when Eric gives you his agency safety plan update. Fuel focus, that's where we're measuring how much fluids do we use, whether that's diesel fuel, ATF, transmission fluid, all of those types of fluids that are consumables. A big deal for us right now is our customer experience, as we've just been talking about with fare modernization. And in order to serve the public better, we are continuously working on our public Wi-Fi solutions, whether that's on the vehicles or we have proof of concepts going on right now in some of our larger, I guess, Kelly, do we consider Rosa Parks a transit center? Yes. Yes. So we've got a proof of concept going on at our Rosa Parks Transit Center, since it serves a larger percentage of people than what a typical bus stop is. We are heavily invested in working with Eric's team in safety, and so we are doing upgrades right now on our video management systems and all the different video integrations we can do. We're upgrading all of the mobile routers inside of our vehicles because a lot of our data actually is coming from our vehicles. What's going on with our buses while they're out on the road? What about our LRVs and streetcars when they're out on that alignment? So that is a big project where we're modernizing it. Continuously, we are working on that rail infrastructure and doing cybersecurity upgrades. From an IT standpoint, that rail environment is the most sensitive environment we have. It's considered public infrastructure in an IT environment, just like an electrical plant, a water plant, anything like that. Rail is that same kind of infrastructure, so we guard it very closely. We're also, as we talked about in previous meetings, we are working on different AI tools. How can we harness the power of AI to be, as Eric calls, that force multiplier, where his team can use the AI for hopefully preventing, catching incidents before they're going to happen. And then the big one, and I'm really going to credit Elizabeth Presidio on this when she came in, was pushing us to better our data and analytics environment. If we want to be that data-driven agency like we all talk about, we have to do a better job of generating the data, collecting the data, so that all of our reporting personnel can actually have data that's validated to go through and figure out what problems do we need to solve first, what would benefit the customer and our riders most. So we've got a number of data and analytics projects on there for you. I just wanted to take a moment and also say that I think in one of the last meetings, we talked a little bit about TMOC. And I just wanted to explain to everybody that while TMOC is not specifically full-time employees for CATS, from an IT perspective, there is no difference between TMOC and bus operations. And there is for rail. They just happen to be contract employees, but they use all of our major systems just like the rest of CATS does. So when we talk about IT and what IT is doing, we are servicing bus as much as we are servicing all the rest of our modes of transit. All right, Logan. All right, so here we're going to talk really quickly about some of our largest business projects that are going to have the most impact on all these CATS verticals. So the first one we are implementing from scratch is a large enterprise asset management. Right now, what we have is a maintenance and materials management system. What vehicles are we working on? What type of maintenance are we doing on that vehicle? It scratches the surface of the data that we need in order to understand what the cost of running the buses are, being able to project what our future needs are around our LRVs. Implementing an enterprise asset management system, it's going to give us much more data and give our different leads a much better idea of where they should be pushing their things. Along with that, we are implementing the risk safety management software. Again, that is the software that will underpin our agency safety plan and make it easier for Eric's safety leg of his business to understand what is going on out there from an incident perspective and being able to collect some of the data that we need to report on. Underneath there, I've given you just a quick blurb about what these systems do, and so that you understand why we're doing these projects and why we're not pausing them. Some of the dependencies, the drivers, and what we're integrating these systems with. On the slide with Trapeze EAM is Workday, because we were going to do an integration with EAM with the city's Workday instance before the payback had passed. Our plans were to do that. So instead, now, as we're spinning up our own Workday instance for the MPTA, we're going to be doing an integration with the Workday instance. So EAM and Workday are going to talk to each other. And why? That's your transformation note over there. The implementation of Trapeze, EAM, and risk, that takes care of so much of our operational side of the house. You can see right there with EAM, we're going to manage assets, the record of maintenance activities, our safety events, and be able to utilize operational data. Well, that operations is half of what we do as an agency. The other half of what we do as an agency is about our budget, our procurement, and our people. So that's what Workday is doing for us, is we are going to manage all of that. Think of the power if we combine that. We combine the data from our operations with the data from our people and our procurements and our budgets. With that, we're going to be able to really report on what is going on with CATS. How do we create roadmaps that really push us forward in the maturity model? To use Rachel Stark's word, how do we be aspirational? We'll have a really good understanding of where we sit once we have Trapeze, EAM, and Workday implemented and talking to each other.
And one other note to Rachel's earlier point about TMOC. So once that, with the MPTA Workday tenant being stood up, not only will that be Workday for that MPTA, but we will also be bringing TMOC as a separate entity within the tenant. Right now, they operate tangentially within the city's Workday system to process financial transactions and procurement, and because they are part of the workflow loop, but they use QuickBooks on the other side to manage kind of day-to-day transactions. And so to garner as much efficiency as possible and no redundancy from a financial standpoint, and also create better integrations with EAM and Ultimate Data, they will live inside our Workday tenant as a separate organization.
So everything we do in IT, if it's a large project, we phase it in. Our goal always is to get to market as quickly as possible so that everybody can begin using the software, using it in a more simplified manner. We phase in improvements over time. So from a Workday perspective, our first goal is 1/1/27 to make Workday go live with the MPTA. One of our next phases is going to be bringing on TMOC as a separate company within our Workday tenant. So that's a second phase. Okay, Logan. All right, other large business projects that we have going on is we're doing upgrades to our HASTIS scheduling system. So that's just typical improvements, but we're also doing expansions. Right now, HASTIS serves bus extremely well. What we are doing is bringing on additional modules to help rail meet some of that maturity so that they can more easily schedule their vehicles and schedule their operators to meet some of the mandates that we are under. You can see some, again, your dependencies, your integrations, and your drivers. Another one that we've spoken about quite a bit is that fare modernization and open payments. I think I've been here at CATS for 2 years when I went to New York City because I love to go to the Broadway plays. And then we rode the subway, and I was in love with being able to, I didn't even take my phone out of my pocket after the second time I rode. It automatically charged me as I went through the gates. Our initial time, I just took out my phone and used my Apple Payments to pay for my ride. I didn't have to download an app. I didn't have to preload any kind of cards. So that was our real driver on starting this fare modernization, was that open payments for that rider who may not be that everyday rider who comes to go to the Panthers games or Major League Soccer or something else, who wants to ride, but wants the convenience of understanding how to pay without the complexity. So we first started planning how to do open payments. And then often when we start a project, you find out little, something comes out of the woodwork, you find out a little bit more. So as we dug into how to make open payments viable, it really turned into an overhaul of our fare environment. We had to modernize it. We have right now, as you've heard from multiple presentations, a very complex fare structure and stuff. So underpinning all of the changes that we are doing to this fare modernization program is technology. We program all of these business decisions into software. That software often flows down to hardware. And so we're building this whole system to make everybody's business ideas come to life. The other one, again, this is going back to our data and analytics, is TransTrack. One of the things that we have some challenges with is our NTD reporting. So we've been looking for solutions to make it easier on our operational reporting groups and those management groups to gather the data that they need to make factual and accurate reporting. The last one I want to really touch on real quick is our CAD AVL upgrade. That CAD AVL upgrade is really one of the hearts of the transit system. If the operational control centers are our brain, our CAD AVL systems are the heart of what we do. That CAD AVL stands for computer aided automated dispatch. So that's how we dispatch our vehicle. And AVL is automatic vehicle location. Where are our vehicles at and what are their statuses? So we constantly do improvements on this CAD AVL system. We're doing major ones right now to make it easier for some of our operators on the buses to have turn-by-turn directions. We're doing improvements on the passenger counting systems because those feed into that CAD AVL system. And we are also upgrading the way our transit feeds work. I don't know if everybody understands, but that is where we get our real-time feed. So that we feed Google, Apple Maps, and CATS pass using our CAT AVL data. So real quick, if you run to the next slide, I'm gonna not talk about this forever, but you can see which groups are impacted by these projects. So those are all of our major operational groups up top. Next slide, Logan. We talked about phases. Here are how all of these projects overlap, the phases of the project, and when we expect to hit different gates. So you can see a lot of this work is happening, going on right now, but some of these projects are not going to go live until between gates 2 and 3, and then some of them will go on for a while past gate 3 in different phases.
And the reason why some of these are so critical to occur in this order and not wait till we get through the MPTA transition is that many of them are end of life. And if we don't replace them, then we'll be putting the organization at risk of not having support for them as critical infrastructure.
So when we go back to our house analogy, when we say end of life, a lot of you own houses, work in that industry, you can think of that as deferred maintenance. We can replace the roof now, or we can replace the roof after it starts leaking. Next slide, Logan. And I already touched on these, so I'm not going to spend much time, but we're working on video management system upgrades so that we can pull all of our mobile data into what we call our facilities video. That's video at sites along our rail platforms. Those are actually 2 different systems that we're pulling together. Video has been a hot topic for us. I'm talking video AI. So we have multiple AI pilots in the planning. Next slide, Logan. We talked about the in-vehicle routers. Again, one thing I'm really proud of is we have lots of real-time data. If we have an incident going on out there in one of our vehicles, Eric's security team can pull up that real-time video and see exactly what's going on at that vehicle. We can also share that video with CMPD, so they also have that situational awareness in real time. Again, we talked about rail infrastructure and cybersecurity upgrades. That's just a normal work process for us. It never stops out in that rail environment. Next one, Logan. We talked a little bit about the separation efforts. We really can't stop these efforts because there's too much risk to our business. So we have worked on ways to make sure we don't overwork our teams, but we're continuing to keep these. Next slide, Logan. So to wrap it up, how are we keeping the lights on and what are our next steps? In order to maintain these operational technology projects and also do all of the divestiture projects, we brought on a company called TY Land who really specializes in transit operational technology. And they've augmented our project staff and some of our subject matter experts to help us deliver all of these projects. I want to make sure everybody understands that IT is just like the rest of operations. We build it and then we have to maintain it. So we are adding systems on, or we are really expanding the size of those systems. In order to support that, we're going to be using a lot of managed services. We're going to use that for Workday, but we're also going to use it for some of the MPTA operational technology, as well as we talked about in a previous meeting for our infrastructure support. As we learn more about the systems, as we have the time, we will probably onboard some of those managed services as FTEs. And then to keep you guys abreast, right now, CAPS Technology is slated to come about every other operational safety committee meeting, and we'll provide you updates on what you're interested in hearing more about, whether that's the Workday project, all of these operational technology projects, or that MPTA infrastructure and technology services. I'm done.
Thank you.
Any questions? My only comment just is I don't see, maybe I'm missing it this year because we're a little bit higher up, but significant investment around security, infrastructure, and advanced technologies to enhance security on our bus and rail system. I think that has to be an absolute high priority for us. And I think that I understand how much workload you have, so if we need to use outside resources to do that, I don't want to be sitting here.
It's in the video AI integrations is one area, but it also gets captured as part of fair modernization. There are elements in fair modernization that also work in effect to increase our security presence. And so it is in there, the video AI integrations, because it's really looking at, it's trying to identify systems or what to use. It's the initial part of that then could lead to further deployment or larger, a larger conversation about that. But this is still in the identification phase.
Yeah, and the Genetech, moving everything to a common video management platform is really kind of the foundation and from which to be able to add additional systems and think about it. Because right now everything's in disparate systems and they're having to go to multiple applications to look at different video feeds. And so this, by getting everything into one system, allows for other technologies to be utilized.
So maybe what I would ask is separately, we can have some focus around that because it might be coming from, but I am always keen on what are we doing? How are we doing it? Who's owning it? And what's the medical timeline? I want to see all the milestones so we can track the progress because again, I see this as a very, very important issue that if we think about the safety incidents that we've had on the light rail, if we had different types of technology that exist out here, we could have averted those situations.
Yeah, and we'll also touch on that. And Eric will, as part, when we think about the security update next month and how those start to become more integrated. Into the overall.
The security and the technology. Have you considered
I'm sorry, we can't really allow outside comments. But yeah, maybe if you want to share it with a staff member.
Yeah, we can touch base afterward.
Yeah. Thank you.
These graphs, I can't read them. Can we give them full size, sent to us, little charts? Like they look great and colorful, but I can't even like zoom in. So I have to do that full size. That's mainly. No. That's
Madam Chair. Madam Chair, it's Christy. Can you hear me? My hand is raised.
Let's go ahead, Christy.
Okay, thank you. First of all, Rachel, thank you for your update. I love the way you incorporate the house into your storytelling to help us get clear on exactly what you're sharing. So thank you for creating a way to tell a technology story that makes it really very interesting. But my question, and I think it actually has been answered when Vice Chair Longo asked his question, but I'm going to put it in the room anyway. My question is there a dashboard or a war room that allows you to see everything that's happening? So you can zoom in on a particular station or you can zoom in on a particular statistic, maybe a bus is running behind schedule or ahead of schedule. Is there a dashboard or a war room that allows you to see all this information in one place?
It's the Operations Control Center. Now, if you're specifically talking about security camera feeds, CMPD also has access to all of our security camera feeds in their real-time crime center. But sort of the heart of the operations and the information is the Operations Control Center. We currently have a rail operations control center and a bus operations control center. But in the future, I know one recommendation or possibility is to integrate those together into a unified operations control center. But the answer is the operations control centers for rail and bus.
Yeah, we would like to evolve so that the operation control centers are at least co-located maybe not necessarily integrated, but if we can get to a point where they're at least co-located, that would absolutely be helpful from an operational response standpoint. We do have camera feeds at Sugar Creek that feed into that one location that are constantly monitored. So I would say everything is monitored. We just need to evolve so that it's all coming into one operation center.
Yeah, I'm envisioning a war room where all the key performance indicators um, are real time being updated, and you can see what's happening across the ecosystem of cats.
Yeah,
100%.
agree.
It's on our roadmap.
I even like the title, War Room.
Thank you, Christy. Do you have anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
If we don't, do you have any other comments? Any members would like to make? Okay, we'll move along then to, and we should be mindful of time, the public transit agency safety plan overview.
All right, I'll be quick, because I know we're getting pressed for time. So let's start with slide 2. Yeah, that's fine. Just want to get into a little overview of what this plan is about. So for the purposes of this briefing, we're talking about Rev 5 of the ASP, which is a combined bus and rail ASP. Just to update you, we're working with the FTA based on their special audit, and as a result of one of the findings, we are dividing rail from bus and coming up with 2 separate distinct ASPs. They'll be available to you for review here in the next several months, but just wanted to advise you that we are evolving from a single plan that incorporates both rail and bus activity into 2 separate ASPs. So what is the ASP? The ASP is a framework. It's a framework that integrates the functions of safety into the overall management structure of the organization. It's designed to equitably disseminate principles related to safety so that the organization, the agency is truly working on behalf of the principles that are embedded in this document. If you take a look at some sister plans that are out there, or sister standards, I would say, such as the ISO 45000 series, such as ANSI Z10, both of these standards speak to management accountability, employee participation, planning, measurement and evaluation, implementation and operation, as well as management. The principles that are embedded into some of these sister documents are absolutely aligned with what the FDA is asking us to comply with. And if you go to slide 3, next slide, the principles that I've just described are embedded into these 4 pillars. So if you delve into the ASP is centered around these 4 pillars. And again, the principles that I just described from those sister standards are baked into these 4 pillars. Next slide. So how does this all work? When we're looking at inputs and outputs, there are a number of sources that we use to try to assess what's going on in the field. We look at hazard reports, accident investigations, field reports, job safety analysis. All of these are feedback that we receive, and then as a result of the feedback that we track and review on a regular basis, we see corrective actions under continuous improvement processes. We're constantly putting risk mitigations into play. Training initiatives may need to be conducted because of either lack of knowledge or behavioral aspects that we see in the field that would be considered unsafe. Policy updates are occurring on a regular basis to address these findings as well as operational. So next slide. The first pillar related to policy, if you delve into the ASP talks about performance indicators under this pillar. It talks about accountability, it assigns titles to those that touch the function of safety, and there are goals that are associated with this pillar. I would say that the most important component of this pillar, and based on policies that were developed on behalf of the ASP, these principles operationalize those policies that are developed. So next slide. This is an example of some of those performance indicators that are buried into the pillar of the ASP. But give a real world example of an implementation of a policy that occurred last year working with our regional state partners. We worked together to develop a road worker protection program based on new standards that were developed by the MPTA. Policy was developed, but that policy was really developed on behalf of the principles that were embedded to make sure that there's a degree of an accountability associated with the operation, and that there's an understanding of responsibility as well as the procedures that are necessary. So procedures are one aspect of the policy that was developed, but the actual alignment to the management accountability piece is a strong component, which again operationalizes that particular policy. Next slide. Risk management. Risk management is a core function associated with the safety management system. Without risk management, you don't have policy. This is where the identification, recognition, and control of hazards, vulnerabilities that we identify through various means that I described are tracked. There's risk ratings that occur to show level of severity. Getting back to Rachel's presentation, the framework that she's developing is going to allow us to systematize this particular pillar. We'll be able to have a better tracking of events. We'll have more feedback coming from our drivers. We'll be able to identify mitigations, and it'll be unified under a risk management approach. We just recently developed a unified risk management policy, and the principles developed within that particular policy, the methodology associated with that particular policy will be incorporated into the framework that, again, Rachel has just described. So looking forward to making this plumbing connect, because it will absolutely give us an advantage to how we're monitoring our system as a result of these connections. I would go back to the FTA's special audit, where they said that we're very good at the identification, we're very good at the mitigation. It's the tracking that we need to make work, need to do better on, and the connection between the framework that Rachel is developing and the information that we collect is really going to help us with that tracking process. Next slide. Just want to highlight the log to the left is how we really track vulnerabilities and hazards within the workplace. They come from a number of different sources, as I described, but our committees work together on behalf of these logs to make sure that they're being tracked and closed out. It's something that we share with our SSO partners on a monthly basis. so that there's an understanding at the state level of the types of hazards and the severity of hazards that we're contending with. The analysis to the right is a study that we conducted. It was a behavioral-based study observing our passengers, our community that interfaced with the rail system, and giving us some indications of where our accident-prone locations may be in relation to pedestrian crossings and pedestrian and rail crossings. So the results of this ultimately led to a broader study that we're working now, teasing out some of the information based on that study. I would assume that would be a topic of discussion for the future. Next slide. Safety assurance. Are we doing what we're doing? Are we truly doing what we said we were going to do? That's the assurance piece. The ASP is monitored for implementation and compliance purposes. We have a audit schedule. It's a 3-year audit schedule. Every 3 years, we take an aspect of the ASP and we audit that particular aspect of the ASP. This is something that's shared with our state partners, and that particular the schedule is also shared with our state partners. So we agree upon what we're going to look at. We agree upon the due dates that the report is due to the state, and we collectively look at the determinations based on that audit. Our quality team is on a separate but relatively similar quality schedule, looking at implementation of contract requirements. So next slide. Just recently, we did a configuration management and quality configuration management audit, and that particular slide is related to a open cap that we have. Caps are another way of ensuring that we're complying with what needs to be complied with. CAP is a corrective action plan. So any analysis that comes forward, either by the state or by our internal team, there's a CAP that is identified. There's a description that's provided with that particular CAP, and we move forward to close that particular CAP as a team. Next slide. So safety promotion. There's a number of ways that we do promotion, written through newsletters, training, out in the field at the beginning of a job. We'll do a job safety briefing to underscore the high hazard operations that are associated with that operation. We have a frontline engagement when it comes to promoting safety, and the goal is to make sure that there's a level of awareness to what's happening out there to prevent injury, making sure that everybody's in compliance with the control. This not only occurs internally, this occurs with our state partners. They come out, take a look at what we're doing on the rail, for instance, to make sure that RWP program that I just described, that all aspects of that RWP program are being implemented accordingly. So next slide. This is just examples of some of the documents that we acquire on behalf of promotion, or that we develop on behalf of promotion. We were just recently on a local hip hop station, which we're reaching a demographic that maybe we don't normally reach. It was a good time. Me and Light Rail Larry out in the track, talking about safety. I don't know how it was reached by his listeners, but it's a lot of fun. So I just want to go over next slide. We need to talk about the approval process and how that works. So as stated, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be presenting to you a draft of the ASP that has been reviewed by the state on an annual basis. The rail ASP, this time will be a dedicated rail ASP, is reviewed by the state. We make a determination that the changes in that document are comprehensive and correspond to the findings that occurred in the previous year. That particular document, once it's in its draft form by the state, will be presented to this team for consideration moving forward. So that is my next slide. Again, just a final summary. We're looking, the implementation of the ASP is a framework by which the principles, if applied, allow us to engage with both the business aspect of the authority as well as the employees that are conducting business real time. It's designed to provide principles to prevent incidents from occurring, and the harmonization between the principles of the ASP and the compliance guidelines that come from OSHA, EPA, the state code is something that truly a proactive way of conducting business and preventing incidents from occurring.
A couple of things to remember on this, because there's a lot of this is alphabet soup. When we start getting into this, all kinds of acronyms. The agency safety plan is really a framework that is utilized by the FAA, the FTA, other federal agencies that is really based on what is referred to as SMS, or safety management systems. It creates that framework. It is absolutely normal course of business for the ASP to be revised annually. As we discover things that we want to make changes in, but also as FTA or other agencies provide further guidance that may necessitate a change. So it is a normal process. As members of the MPTA, you will see this every year. And as members of this committee, we will work with you every year as these changes come. This year has a pretty significant change in the form of separating the ASP, right? Taking one ASP and making it two because of the safety audit. But the process itself is very, very common, and this will be sort of a normal work plan item as we start to roll into summer, because it is routinely updated or approved around October of each year when those changes come. So ahead of that, just know that we'll work with you to bring those, but October is sort of the timeline where we start to take these forward.
Thank you. Any questions from committee members? Yeah.
I just had a quick one. One of the findings too in the FTA audit was that we weren't at our 50-50 ratio for our safety committees between management and frontline workers. Will both those committees be at 50-50 before we see the draft of the ASP in October?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. The next item, and we've got about a little under a half hour left. The next item is the review of the microtransit program after 1 year.
I'd like to introduce Dietrich Brown. He is the program administrator for our microtransit program and has been with the program since before implementation. And it's actually one of project that he had worked on with we participate in a program called Max with other transit systems across the country. we're hosting several of those folks that are participating in this year's class this week. Dietrich has microtransit as part of his project, and we happen to be implementing it at the same time. And so we're able to move him into the program administrator role. He's had a long history here, tenure here at CATS, working as a planner, ran the van pool program, and then was part of the paratransit department for many years, and made the switch over to microtransit about a year ago.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Good morning, everyone. Hopefully, everyone has received via email an electronic, and when I say everyone, board members, an electronic copy of our micro transit annual report. It's our very first one. So hopefully everyone's received that. Before we just dive into everything, this opportunity provides me with a chance to, highlight some of the things that were in that document that you received. Next slide. Next slide. Thank you. So a little bit about what's transpired with our motor service microtransit in this past year. The CATS Better Bus Plan identified 19 microtransit zones as an opportunity to expand our transit system and its coverage. It's also an opportunity for us to provide some first mile, last mile connections to our customers. Microtransit is a demand response service that utilizes technology and it allows customers to make reservations for trips within a certain geographical area, right, zone. Only in that zone, they can move around and reserve trips to make commutes within the zone. And with that, CATS launched February 2025, our first microtransit zone. And we ran that service, or we launched that service along with running or operating our fixed route bus service up in North Mecklenburg County, Village Rider Service. The zone kind of consists of northern Charlotte and the three towns, Huntersville, Cornelius, and Davis. And I'll show you what that zone looks like here in the next slide. But we operated microtransit and the Village Rider bus service for about 6 months. And took that opportunity to learn more about microtransit and what it offered to our customers in the North Bank area. In July of 2025, we sunsetted the Village Rider service. Moved forward with what we believe to at some level of success with our microtransit. Next slide, please. So here's a look at what our zone looks like. There are several points of interest within that zone. There are several park and ride locations within that zone that provide us with the opportunity for first mile, last mile connections. As you can see, the zone is 29.6 square miles. And within a zone that's the size of this zone, we utilize about 9 vehicles to provide that service. And we don't always run all 9 at the same time. There's a strategy behind how we deploy those vehicles. But they are Toyota Siennas, minivans. 3 of them are accessible vehicles for persons who have disabilities. And 4 of them are equipped with bicycle racks. The cost for this service is the same as the other CATS services, $2.20. Next slide. So a little bit about our service and the performance of it. And when you think about service, folks generally want to know how many people are riding and where are the people going when they are riding. This slide depicts what our ridership numbers look like. The things that I'd like to point out here maybe are the unique riders. Unique riders are persons who utilize the service consistently. They are people who perhaps ride daily, even multiple times in a day. They may ride weekly and multiple times in a week. So you get what I'm saying? These are the people who really decide to use microtransit as a way to get around within the zone or to make a first mile, last mile connection to go out of the zone. But this is, in my opinion, where our foundation lies. These people are really who are driving ridership. So I pay close attention to this number. I want to see it increase or at a minimum maintain. That number starts to decrease. That's giving me some indication that, you know, there's something being negative. There's something negatively impacting perhaps the service. So unique riders, they are the foundation of the ridership for microtransit. And the other metric I point out is pooled riders. Pooled riders are simply riders who share their microtransit trip with another customer. And you can see this year, in our first year, we were up at 50%. And the truth is, that's good, but it's a balancing act going forward. Because we're already at a threshold where we've got to be able to maintain our operational efficiencies, but at the same time, we can be our fiscal efficiencies are important as well. So being able to balance that, if this number goes too high or too low, you can find some negative impacts to our operational efficiencies, customer experience, wait times could increase. And what I mean is with wait times, you can imagine that if the vehicle is stopping to pick up passengers with a customer already on board, that customer's travel time is increasing. The person that's not on the vehicle already is waiting. So their wait time is, you know, perhaps starting to creep up. So when I say that this is something we need to really pay attention to and balance, that's what I mean. There's nothing wrong with, you know, we are public transit. Microtransit is a shared ride experience. There's nothing wrong with pooled riders. I want to make sure that we're clear there. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just we need to make sure we have the proper balance with that percentage. Next slide. I mentioned that, you know, folks generally want to know where our riders are going. And what you see here on the left side of the screen is the top 5 destination and a map of our service zone and where the activity is taking place in our microtransit zone. So the more brighter colors are you know, indicate some heavy activity. But one of the things that, I don't know how many people are familiar with North Mecklenburg, but one of the things that kind of surprised me, you are, I know that you are. One of the things that kind of surprised me about this list, nothing earth shattering here. If you're familiar with the zone, you know all of those places. But over the course of a year, I've been kind of looking at this and, you know, there's a giant retailer that just, in my opinion, controls traffic, controls parking, controls a lot of things, and that's Walmart. Walmart is located at Brighton Town Center, and Brighton Town Center came in second. So that was kind of surprising to me, because typically people want to go to Walmart for whatever reason. It's a big shopping place, and a lot of people go there, but Brighton Town Center has a Walmart, and for most of the year, it was the top destination. But by the end of the year, we have a new destination. And an honorable mention, you can stay on that slide, that's fine. Honorable mention there was Central Piedmont's Maracas campus up in Huntersville. So customer experience. I want to talk a little bit about that. What we've done here is grab some of the comments from some of the customers, our users in microtransit. And, you know, what I'll say is the people that have provided us feedback via the app or through our customer service, our call centers, have been generally positive. But in an effort to be transparent, we found a comment that we wanted to share with you from a customer that isn't so great. There are some experiences out there, believe it or not, where Customers aren't always totally happy with this service. And I'm just going to read that one and talk a little bit. Drivers are great, but it's very difficult to plan as one does not know how long the wait for a ride will be. That has been something that on a daily basis, I've been challenged with attempting to manage. And I'm not going to say that it's insurmountable, but it's one of those things that in demand response service, you tend to have this kinds of feedback. An analogy here would be you've gone to your favorite theme park, you've identified the roller coaster that you really want to get on, you've been dreaming about riding that roller coaster, you get there, and the lines is as long as the day is long. And along the way, there are measures that say, hey, you got a 20-minute wait, you got a 10-minute wait as you continue to wait in line, because there are only a certain number of cars, roller coaster cars, that each customer, each patron can jump into to experience the thrill of their ride. And I kind of liken that to microtransit, if you will, particularly when our peak times are at their highest. Some of our busiest times are from noon until about 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. It's just jam-packed. People are wanting the service, demanding to be picked up here and taken there. And so with that analogy, I'd like to share with folks that there is going to be a wait time. This is not going to be Uber or Lyft service. Even though people compare it to that, this is not that. This is public transit. And we are attempting with our service to meet a demand. And you can imagine that long line, there are only a certain number of roller coaster cars that patrons can jump into at one time. But everybody can still experience the ride on the service. And we have there a pie chart with some of the comments, and we categorize those comments. Driver performance is by far the largest comments. We got a lot of comments about the driver performance, and those mostly being positive. And then there was the service quality satisfaction. If we get feedback, just like we've shared with our customers on that. Next slide, please. So I talked a little bit about wait times. Yes, sir.
That's a quick question.
Sure.
In your report, you show the pie chart, but then it looks to me like initial satisfaction is very high with the service, and it dropped down, and now it's trended up just slightly a little bit. Am I reading that right? And is it because it was a shiny new object, or is it because now more people know about it and are using it in wait times? What's driving the satisfaction on down?
Sir, very good question, and I'll talk a little bit about it here. But what you will see is that it is a new service, and in the first 6 months, we really thrashed it through. We started in the summer of last year to continue that growth, but it started leveling off some, and we started getting a lot of feedback about 6 months in about the service. And we recognized, due to some limited resources, that we needed to, throw some other vehicles to meet the demand for our customers so that they can all be satisfied. And so what you see here is the first 6 months, our wait times gradually just increased because of the demand. It's growing, people are using it. Somewhere around the fall, things got a little dicey with our wait times. We were close to our goal of 30 minutes, people waiting for a vehicle to come to them. And you can see that in November, we were able to add additional vehicles to the service. And you notice that wait time started going down. So exactly what you described, sir, is kind of what's happened with customer experience as well as our wait times.
Can you go back? It's interesting because your satisfaction trends really start dropping from March, and they peak up a little bit in July. It's 25, and then they began a bit in October of 25, and then they keep dropping until December, January. And so even in January, where it looks like the wait times are going down, they're still bottomed out a bit.
Yeah,
Maybe it's delay and stuff.
one of the things that I didn't highlight here is, traditionally in demand response, the fall into the winter, demand for service typically kind of goes down in terms of ridership. With this service in our first year, we kept our ridership kept increasing. We had some of our largest use, I think, outside of the month of March of 26. December had a high number of ridership. January and February also high numbers for ridership, even though we had some weather events in the wintertime, we were still just packing the vehicles. So I think that the demand and being able to make sure that we have applied the proper resources may speak to why some of that satisfaction.
I would say, I think we probably need to focus on the executive summary at this point. I see you have a number of slides left, and I think we really do want to know the overall impact where we stand with
Yes, ma'am.
performance. But then we still have one more topic left and just 10 minutes left, so.
Okay, real quick, I'll wrap it up. Some of the next steps that we're going to take in the current zone. Thank you, Logan. We're going to continue to work with our software provider to make changes in the software so that it, performs optimally for customers. We're going to work with our service provider to make sure that they are maximizing efficiency. And obviously, marketing and educating our customers in North Metro is going to continue to be important. Partner with colleges and the universities in the zone to make sure that incoming students and students that are on campus are aware of the service. And another thing that's coming in North Make is with our October service change, we will be extending our operating hours till 9 p.m. every night.
What's driving that?
The later hours, so we're seeing a lot of demand for trips in the afternoon peak versus the morning peak. And we believe that if we provide that extended, hour, we can make sure that we capture those customers. What tends to happen is within the 5 and 6 o'clock hour, if you haven't planned, people start, I have to make sure I get my trip back and that kind of thing. And so we have had where we have had drivers out approximately 30 to 40 minutes after, because
as we roll out additional zones, we also want to be consistent on timing. And so again, Kelly will talk about it in a minute, but there are 2 additional zones that'll get rolled out in the current year. And so we want to try to be consistent in timing. This was the first zone, and so it's
also we also got a lot of feedback from customers, extending it, and a lot of the retail starts to close at 8. And so if people are using it for work, being able to have it till 9 o'clock allows them to help.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Just so I understand the ridership numbers, the 502 unique a month and 220 some per day. Talking here with Nick suggests that the average rider is something like 2 round trips a week. Is that how it's dispersed? Do you have information, or is it a smaller number of people doing a larger number of trips?
Unique riders is an average on a monthly basis. So there's actually a lot of more unique riders across the system as a whole, but that's the average we have about per month. So there may be one unique rider in May that doesn't ride in April, and so it's just how it averages out. But we've had more than 502 unique riders for the whole service.
Trying to ask, is it a relatively small number of people doing a lot of rides that creates the data, and then some large number of people doing 1 ride or 2 rides, occasionally, or is it more what's it called for?
I understand what you're asking. I'm not in a position to provide you with, an exact there. I can tell you though that in the scheme of things, when you look at what our overall ridership is, I would say that it's a small number compared to the masses of people that we are transporting. When you look at the monthly average, compared to the number of people that.
We can get you kind of the breakdown of kind of the number of rides per user.
Yeah.
users on a monthly
The
basis.
ridership numbers are consistent with the Village Rider, which was the service that this replaced. They've actually gone over some of those Village Rider numbers as well, I think in certain months, not necessarily for the entire service. So we do see that there's transit propensity. There are people who use the Village Rider who are also using this service. And then there are new folks coming into the system. You can also see, if you know the northern part of the county, those top 5 locations, 2 of them are grocery stores, Northcross and Brighton. Those are both grocery store locations. Davidson College is one, Burkdale is another. The 5th is North Lake Mall. North Lake Mall is a big transfer point for bus routes coming up from Charlotte. So we also suspect that it's either people using micro to get to the bus to go down, to come into Charlotte, or vice versa, the kind of the reverse commute, people coming up the Babies Ford, the 9, yes. I'm sorry, the 7. Central is the 9, the 7, to come up into one of the northern towns for whatever purpose, but we see that, and so those sort of drive those top 5, kind of gives you an indicator of what we think people are using them for as well.
Thank you very much. I have a lot of questions on this, but I'll ask directly. It's very interesting. Thank you. That brings us to our last item, and I don't, just from a time check standpoint, do we have reports to the committee or other business after the service equity analysis is finished? Okay. Let's go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So this is we've got Bruce Jones, our service planning manager, here to give a follow-up presentation. We previously brought a presentation on the service equity analysis and the FY 27 service changes, and Bruce is going to talk about public engagement that has been undertaken over the past couple of months, and then a breakdown of the FY 27 service changes into our 3 service change periods. So I'm trying to over to Bruce.
And so just for the interest of time, you can skip this. We covered this at the last meeting just to show you the Title VI process and that we did not have an adverse impact on minority or other populations. But the overall changes that we're proposing for next year, so we can skip to that. So just to start, to give you a summary of public engagement. So we had a number of meetings throughout May and June, where we engaged a number of individuals about the changes for next fiscal year. And so we did a virtual meeting on the 21st. We had a couple of in-person events at the Urban Design Center and also at CTC. We did some partner events that we partnered with Sugar Creek for the Raise Grant meeting that they had in that corridor, and then also the Power 98 Madhouse live event as well. Overall, we had about 112 attendees for the virtual meeting, 150 interactions at the in-person events, and then about 7,000 views of the online survey that we had. And so this map shows you just the geographical spread of the survey respondents. The lines on the map show you the routes that we are recommending improvements to next year. So you can see that we are covering a good portion of the routes in terms of feedback that we received. The demographic questions were optional, but for those that did partake in that, we found that 52% were male, 41% identified as female. Race, ethnicity, 42% white, 28% Latin or African American, 6% Hispanic or Latino. And then from an age breakdown, they're on the younger side, if you will. So 36 to 55 represent the most or the highest percentage of response, I should say, with 36%, and 26 and 35 at 21%. And then so we asked additional questions for just to get a sense of who was taking the survey, if they're current users, if they're thinking about using. 94% are current riders, and broken down, that's 58.9% that ride bus and 58.2% that ride rail. The top routes in the survey were Blue Line, Route 9, Gold Line, Route 7, 16, 27, and 5, which are consistent with our ridership. So no surprises there. 75% of survey respondents currently ride cabs 3 or more days per week. And then of the 5.4% that said they do not currently ride cabs, the top reasons were not have service within their neighborhood or general area they're trying to connect to. The service is not frequent enough, and they have to walk too far to access the bus stop. So all things that we are working to address through better bus, of course. So we're hoping that we can capture that 5% of riders and beyond that to get the music services.
Can I interrupt just for a second, Bruce? When you say the blue line, is that those are better bus routes that connect to the blue line?
It's the number, so they can select multiple routes. So we find that a lot of our bus riders do connect. So,
okay.
Yeah, there's no surprise of why that's at the top,
Right.
but yeah, so 471 respondents in some form or fashion, right?
So this isn't just about better bus.
It's about better with us, but we still want to get a sense of how individuals are connecting from the system. So those blue line connections and the gold line connections are
System-wide, yeah.
So we also asked to rank their top service priorities for better bus. So we saw that in general, the top priorities for improvements were to add more services for working air trips on weekdays, adding more frequency to routes with the highest ridership, and then improving on-time performance and reliability of our current services. So no surprises there. It's been pretty consistent with what we heard with the engagement for better bus. And then we also honed in specifically on express routes because we have had large cuts since COVID. So we really want to look at how we can continue to support commuter needs and grow that market. And so some of the top priorities for express customers were 20-minute or better service during peak periods, more flexible service during non-peak periods, so more midday service and things of that sort. And then also weekend connections to support travel to uptown for special events. We received about 712 open-ended comments, and I'll just go through the general themes with you. So most of the comments centered around a specific route area or coverage expansion requests. And we're sorting through the data to look at specific routes or areas that individuals are asking to connect to. Improving connections and transfers between bus and rail and other modes. Improving express commuter or parking ride services, more frequency and shorter waits on their services. Improving reliability and on-time performance, and then also improving stops and amenities to bus stops. So I'll go through quickly what we are now recommending for the service changes that will happen in October, February, and June of next year. So starting with the October change. You go to yeah. So we are recommending improvements to 2 of our 15-minute routes, the Springer Airport service and then Route 9. Route 9 will mainly have weekend improvements on Sundays to bring it to a consistent schedule and meet the demand on that route. Improvements to Route 6 to bring that to 20-minute service on weekdays, and then more added trips to the Route 9X, which serves North Lake and Ridge Road communities, Island Creek, I should say, and also the 61X to Arboretum and Waverly. And then also implementing the midday service on the 64X to Matthews. And we are creating a new route, essentially that will operate on the 77 corridor. Previously, that was merged with the 77X, but in a way to reduce rider confusion because it would touch each part of the ride during the midday service. Our recommendation was to split that up into a separate route, just for ease of rider communication. And so it would be Route 177, which is a tentative name at this point, but it will provide midday service to the northern part and rides, Centerville Gateway, North Cross, Cornelius, and Davidson. Also expanding to the West Boulevard area with the micro zone. So serve West Boulevard, Wilkinson, Walmart, the Farmers Market, the airport, the VA Center, and then also the Blue Line station. And then what's not on here, as Dietrich previously mentioned, we're also expanding service to 9 p.m. for the North. So we're recommending improvements in February to Route 7, Bays Ford Road, to bring that to 15-minute service. Route 16, the same as well for February. We're adding more express trips to the 40X and the 46X. And then also implementing a new micro transit zone for the north end Bays Ford Road area. So that's serving Bays Ford, West Charlotte, High School, Drew Hills, Kenmore, and Optus Hall, and also connects over to Parkwood Station. Regarding Route 7, we will be conducting an additional analysis. So currently that route has what we call 2 branches. So one branch provides service directly to North Lake. The other one provides service over to Sunset and Statesville and connects over to Harris. What we'll be looking at is there a way that we can potentially rename that route or help identify, I guess I should say, help get easier for customers to understand that service, because I find that a lot of confusion occurs with the 2 branches for individuals trying to understand if they can get to North Lake on one route or if they have to take another one. So we're trying to reduce that confusion. So I'll say that we'll be doing some additional engagement on the naming convention for Route 7. And then bring that back to you all before the deadline change for final confirmation. And then lastly, for June, so we're making 15-minute service on Statesville, and then also on Sundays, improving that to 30-minute service where it's currently at 60 minutes. And then same for Route 14, improving the Sunday service to 30 minutes for 60 minutes today. So going into the next steps, so we are recommending approval of the equity analysis and service changes as presented today. This came to this body for information, and then we'll be presenting this to the Planning Capital Project Delivery Committee later this afternoon, seeking recommended approval to the executive committee, and then that will be going to the full board in July for their adoption as well. And then I will say too that we'll be continuing the public engagement campaign prior to each service change, just inform riders about what's coming, get additional feedback on the schedules to make sure that we have everything right and ready to go through service change. So quick.
Thanks, that was.
Happy to take any questions.
I do have a question, but anybody else from the committee? I have a question, Bruce, about the airport workers first shift. What is their access to bus service, and will there be changes with that?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that we're really wanting to target for the Sprinter. So currently they have that route, which runs about 5 a.m. to 1 a.m. this morning. And so we'll be doing some targeted engagement to see if we need to expand that service window. One of the things that we're also working is a conversation about microtransit and how that feeds in. So we won't drop off directly at the terminal, but there may be an opportunity for us to connect to Express Deck. So then they'll be able to take that express shuttle to the terminal. So they're trying to get to the airport. So there's some solutions that we're looking at to remedy other instances. So we'll be able to.
We also frequently get questions from employees at the airport who don't work in the terminal, they work on the cargo side. And so there will also be connectivity via microtransit to the cargo side.
So for first shift as well?
First shift starts roughly at 5 a.m. For micro, we'll need to look at the start time. Is it 5 a.m.?
It'll be 6 a.m. to start, but for the Sprinter service in particular, that starts roughly about 5 a.m.
Yeah, we can look at that.
We can look at it.
Yeah, my understanding is that's a challenge right now for those employees. So I'd like to see that included in the plans for improvement.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, and we do not have other business reports to the committee. Okay, I guess we can.
Before we,
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I just have a quick comment observation for us as a body, which is one I want to be hugely respectful of the time that you all put into this stuff and make sure that we give it enough attention. So what I would recommend, and I might have missed if some of the slides that we got here different than we got in our packet or some later stuff.
Yeah, the presentations didn't all make it in the packet, but we can send those out.
What I would recommend as a best practice is that we get all that stuff ahead of time so that we pre-read, that we commit to doing our pre-reads so that when you come in here, it's more of an executive summary, allowing time for discussion in dialogue. I think that's critical. And then I also think on the agenda, we really need to start assigning times because the poor guy at the end gets the compression point.
Yeah.
You're good at it, Bruce, but I just want to be really respectful of everyone and give each topic its due time. So I think for the chair, I know for myself, oh, well, okay, we got 10 minutes on this, we're at 8, we need to speed it up, but that would really help us. So my only comment for being better effective committee.
Good point. Thank you. Thank you. I too thank all of you for the work that goes into this. It is a lot.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that we're hitting the crucial parts for the.
If I could add something, we really are looking at a schedule for these committees, because think about your day today. Every committee is meeting this day. That means that the staff have to produce all of these agendas for this one day, and it's a lot. Would like to offer that.
And I know that July 1, a lot of this is driven by the fact that it's got to get done by, when you tell people that in the public, their jaws just drop. Because it's so much work.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Deborah and we're gonna effectively ask is that I know there's a desire to maybe, come to the government center as few times as possible. But we really need to think about committees, PTA full meetings, PTAC meetings and executive committee and those kinds of things, because it is quite overwhelming to try to get out 4 packages and all of those things when every committee and PTA full body meet on the same day.
Yeah.
Well, and I think like this is an extra meeting today, because our goal was to have operations safety.
This is your regular.
This is our regular meeting, but anything else on the CIE?
You had the extra.
Initially, we said we were going to meet 2 weeks after.
Right, tonight's MPTA meetings.
Correct. So what I'm saying is this would not have been our normal day.
Yeah.
It would have been normal day for operations safety. It's not a normal day for the regular board meeting.
The regular board meeting. Okay.
The last one was surprising with the
So we will try moving forward to keep this committee meeting in 2 weeks.
We're going to try to make a recommendation with Deborah and Carolyn on a cadence of meetings.
Yeah.
That staggers these.
Right.
Yeah.
And tries to.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
And that was our goal, was to be,
We'll be responsive to that.
was to 2 weeks after
That's
the full meeting. Yeah.
And the rest of us aren't worried, the chair has to go back and forth twice.
But I have a vice chair, just in case, No, we do appreciate it. We know it's a lot of work. We're just trying to absorb as much as possible. But I prefer for us to meet on those every 2 weeks. Before or after the full meeting, so that it does give you a little breathing room. I don't think there's much breathing room before January, but. Okay, with that, I guess we can adjourn. Thank you.